a way I wanted to pass the operations only.
Mm-hmm.
Everything should be done. So kind of I work in C sharp, so there is a call delegate. Something called delegate.
Yeah.
So here I was like not able to do that operations in the
Right.
script.
Right.
Yeah. So but somehow I activate. So it's like within the functions I was just written to ify immediate these things, and it is executing and giving the result based on the operator.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's a correct solution. There is a way to do a little bit different. That's what we're gonna look at today. There are multiple solutions. Okay. So one of the solutions. But let's just continue with the rest of and then I'll share with you.
The next question, we can go through it also.
Okay, sure.
The next, you want me to go to next question, or let us discuss this one and then we'll go to
okay.
The second one.
All right. So let me take the screen. Okay, so the solution actually is, let's say, so I do JS fiddle. Okay, now what I really want is this function, right? So let's write it. So I would say const calc equal to, it's a function, right? And it would have two things. It would have operator, I would just say O, and it would have some numbers. Okay. Now, what you guys done is it's correct. You can use like, for example, if I go to Buana solution, I can just copy this code and I can use it here, but I want to make a few changes here. Okay, so instead of arg, I'm just gonna call it n. Okay, and for short form, this would be t. And I'll just accumulator and current value, accumulator and current value, right? And yes, we should have a 0 for for initial value. Okay, so now the sign is the issue, right? Because it could be any sign, right? So what if I can just put somehow?
No, the question is not it could be any sign. Question could be plus, star, or null. There are three things only.
Yeah, three things only. But you can have a division also. You can have any. So I want to make it a very generic. Okay. So how can I do that? So one thing I can do is, what if I take A and C and then make it a string, for example. Okay. And then I can make the sign itself as an operator, right? But this would give me actually a string, right? So if I say if I just well, this should basically nothing but return it, right? Not okay. And if I do calc, let's say if it's a plus sign, and then it will be, let's say, 1, 2, and 3, right? Now, if I just do console log this thing, then I would get, obviously, it won't work because it gives me here A plus C, but it's a string. Okay. Now in JavaScript, there is a function called eval. Do not use this in your production code. It's called eval JavaScript. Okay. What it does, it takes a string and it converts into a statement. Okay, so if I take a string like this, right, and if I do eval, it gives me actually the statement. Okay, so all I have to do is eval. Okay, now let's run this and see if it works. Okay, it gives me 6. Now if I do minus, then we do 1 minus 2 minus 3, right? So it will be minus 5, I guess. Oh, minus 6. 1 minus, yeah, 0 minus 1 minus 2 minus 3. Yeah, so minus 6, right? And you can also do division. Okay. And it would work, right? So, oh, so I do percentage, not a division, actually. This is a, yeah, you can also remainder, right? This would be, sorry, this, right? And it would work as well. So this is pretty cool thing, but it's not a good idea, right? Eval is very, as you can see, if I highlight it, it says event can be harmful. This could be one of the questions that interview can ask. Have you used eval before, and how can it be harmful to your code? Because they don't want you to use eval. So if you use eval, third party or people who want to harm your code can actually inject the code. So they all they have to do is inject string and then call it eval, and it would execute that code. So you can inject the JavaScript into some other people's, so which can be dangerous, right? So try not to use it. Use eval. But we're gonna look at the callback function to solve this issue, so that we can have a generic function that does that. Okay. But this could be one of the solutions, but it's dangerous. Well, it's not dangerous for your code, but using eval, people can inject the code. That's a danger. Okay. But see how simple this solution is. All right. Any question on that?
Yeah, I'm okay.
All right. Okay. So now let's look at the next. And for the null, you can simply provide an operator, right? So I can simply say plus, right? So if I don't provide an operator, then it would be plus operator. Oh, hold on, something happened. Number equal to why is it working? Equal to number. That is strange. Somehow this doesn't like. Yeah, eval somehow doesn't work with this. But yeah, if you do a regular like if else statement, and if you don't provide, you can simply put equal. So this example is a combination of default value and a spread operator, right? So if I do, oh yeah, that's why. That is why I totally forgot, because if I remove, do you guys know what the problem is here? If I remove this thing, right, that means now the operator is 1 now, right? So it doesn't work. I really have to say null for this to work. Now it would give me 6. Oh, hold on. Unexpected token. Null. Somehow eval doesn't like. So let's say if I have to simply return.
Can you try with minus sign instead of null?
Let's say me. Hold on, let me first make sure that this works. Oh, sorry, C. Okay, so eval doesn't work with all of that, so that's fine. But usually the way you would do is if O equal to, plus, just like what Hammond did, then you would say, then do this, right? If I'm not using eval, then I would do something like this, and I can also do then else thing, right? So if I have a null, it should automatically assume that it's a plus because I have a default value. And why is it okay? Let's console log it here. Console log. Why is it not taking the plus? That is strange.
Yeah, it also didn't work for me, the plus sign. So I use this statement.
Okay.
I use the other statement, operator equal to null, then the ternary operator,
Yeah. Oh, okay. You use a ternary operator. Okay.
The ternary operator, because it was not working. That's what I was trying. It didn't work at all. The default, the default value, I was trying to test that, how to, if you don't pass the default value, but it didn't work somehow. So
okay.
I tried in another way, yeah. Ternary operator, check if it is equal to null, then assign this, or else null, then plus, or else whatever value is coming, that's fine.
Okay, so let's say if I put 8, I think it should become, well, somehow, yeah, that is strange. Oh, okay, so if you use it with, okay, maybe something here, like if you use it with the rest parameter, then you should not be using default parameter. You see, regular parameter should not come after default parameter. That is strange. Okay, I did not know about this. I don't see any problem with that, but somehow it does not like it when you have a default parameter as a first argument. Okay. Okay, well, something new to learn, I guess, today. Okay. All right, so somehow it doesn't work. So, but we can just obviously, if that's the case, then we have to do this way. Then we have to simply say, if it's equal to plus, then do it. Otherwise, if it's a null, you can say or O equal to null. Then also do plus, right? Okay, we have to use this way then. So Sahil, you were saying something?
No, it's been cleared now. So
Oh, okay.
usually I was saying like, can we try passing this minus sign? So, but it was something different.
Yeah. So if I do minus, then I have to do if statement again. Okay, yeah. But we'll see how to fix this in another way using callback functions. Okay. So that the whole objective of this thing was this particular problem can be solved using callback function. Okay. All right. So any questions, Bhuvneshwari? Okay. Feel free to ask question, Bhuvneshwari. Yeah. Okay. Let's look at the next question. So for each below, you have 1 pixel border. Font size is 20 pixel. And draw elements AA, BB, CC, and DD and stack up with 100% width, right? So now let's look at the solution from, I think Bhuvneshwari had a solution. And then we'll look at your Hemant. All right, so yeah. Okay, so the first solution here is she used, yes, so you can have, so the first things are stacked, A, B, C, D. And you have 100% width, which is correct. And font size is 20 pixel, which is also correct. The second thing is draw 4 elements with A, B, C side by side with 100 pixel each. So here you have to use inline block, right? So here the B, class B is this. So yes, you have to use inline block and you have width, which is 100 pixels. So that is also correct. The third one is draw 4 elements, stack them up, but 200 pixel width, right? And have parents who control the width. So you need to have a parent, which is in this case R, and the class is C, right? So if you want to control, so this is the only problem you have, Bhuvneshwari. So if I want to control through parent, then I should put this width into parent. So if I do this and put this here, it will be the same result, but I'm controlling it through parent. Got it? So then C, which is the individual element class, don't have to have the width. If the parent has the width, then I can control the width of the children, right? Because ultimately, if it's a block element, then it would take whatever, because by default, it would, if it's a block, then it would take 100%, but the 100% of the parent. So if I restrict the parent to 200 pixels, then all the elements are restricted to 200 pixels. Okay, so that's the trick. Okay.
Restricted here.
So here,
like, suppose you mentioned parent as a 200 pixel.
Yes.
And if your each div present, let us say div is A, B, B, C, C, D, D.
Yeah.
100.
So here, I didn't. Hemant, I couldn't hear you. The last. Hemant, I did not hear the last part. Yeah. What did you say?
Something is happening on the internet today.
Oh, okay.
Looks like on and off. So I was talking about, even if I assign a weight to the parent,
okay,
but still the child, I was not able to restrict the children to 200 pixels.
So by default, it should be, as you can see here, right? So here, the last example, 15, line 15 to 20.
Give one width, like the div class, let us assign some width to the child. If I assign 200 pixel, is it going to come out, or is it not going to be? Is it going to be within that parent?
So the children?
Children, yeah.
Yeah, the children, if I don't assign any width. So here, class C, which is individual elements, right? So I don't have any width here. So by default, it will be 100%, but 100% of the parent. And the parent is R, right? Which has a width of 200. So if I just change here, let's say 2 to 300, then the blue area here will be 300, right? Okay. Now, if I want to control, even though R is 300, I want to control the width of the inner, then I can see if I do width as, let's say, 100 pixel, then
that's what I'm telling.
Then it would be smaller, as you can see. Now I'm saying that, okay, don't take 100%. I want to give, if I don't provide a width, it blocks always 100% of the parent, right?
Sorry, I didn't get that. Can you come again?
Okay, so I have 4 elements, A, B, C, D, right? They are all blocks, which means if I don't provide, and which is a class C here, right? And if I don't provide any width, which means it will have a width of the parent, and the parent here is R, which has a width of 300 pixel right now, right? So
the 300 pixel will be divided into the 4 or
no. So width is like a 1. So it's an outer box, right? As you can see, this black is an outer box, right? So
this is the width.
This is the width.
Outer box, okay.
Yeah, outer box has a 300 width, right? Inner box, which is all this element, which are stacked, as you can see. I can either give it a width. Right now, I gave a width of 100, so they are not going to be 100%. But if I remove this, which means it's going to be, because it's a block, it's going to be 100%. Now, if I run this, it will take parent, which is 300. So it doesn't have the brain of its own. If you don't say anything, it will be whatever the parent is. So if I change the parent to 400 and do it, now all the 4 elements are 400, regardless of, even though I haven't provided any width to it.
What about height? Can we see the height? Suppose I mentioned the height.
Height is basically whatever the font is deriving, right? So here the font size is 20 pixel, right? So each element is 20, 20, 20, 20. If I change it to 40, then the height would change automatically, right?
Yeah.
Or if I don't provide the font size, then it will take whatever the default font size, which is I think 16 pixel, right? Yeah, like this. So height, always think of this way. When you have a block, width is always a parent's width unless you provide width, right? Height is controlled by your fonts, so your content, right? So if you have some content, so for example here, the parent, which is R, parent's height is basically nothing but all the children's height together, right? Because they are stacked, right? So height is always derived. Usually you don't want to control the height. You want to let the content drive the height, right? So that's what's happening. But I could say, let's say R, I can say height equal to, let's say, 500 pixel. Okay. And yeah, now it's 500 pixel, which is higher than its content. I don't want that, right? I want this to be this way, right? Now, if I want a nice round box, I can say, I can put some padding here, right? Or margin. Or like a 5 pixel. Okay. So then it's nicely, right? But as you can see, the parent is basically nicely adjusted based on the Otherwise, what happens? You don't want to, it would look ugly if you change the height, which is different than what your content is, right? Okay. Yeah. And everybody knows what the difference between margin and padding is? So margin is always outside. The padding is inside.
Inside, yeah.
So here what I did, I said to each element, A, B, C, D, I said give 5 pixel margin, which is outside. So what it did, if you look at AA, it just put 5 pixel all around it. Same thing with B, C, and D, right? Now, if I want to say, if I want all the elements to stick together, but I want the border, like some sort of margin around, then I would just simply, instead of doing this, so now if I look at it, it's all sticking together, there is no, and then I would just say padding 5 pixel, right? Now what it will do, it will put a padding of 5 pixel around all 4, but there is no space between the 4 elements, right? Because I'm giving a padding for the parent. Okay. Any questions? All right. Yeah, it looks like Hemant is having a lot of internet issues. Okay. Can you hear me, Hemant?
Yeah, I'm back now. It looks like internet is a little unstable today at my
okay.
end, so yeah, no problem.
All right. So any question on
So
this?
we are discussing about the padding and margin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Okay. So that was it, and then the last one was, yeah. So what is the difference between inline block and inline element? Anybody remember from last week?
yeah, in inline, like we cannot it with respect to the other element to sit in the left and right. Right. When you draw inline, display called inline, then other element can come either to the left or right.
Right.
But in the block, it doesn't allow it. It takes 100% of the
Yes.
available weight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And
but inline block is like, it's like a inline element, but it don't force a line break.
so the difference between, so the block and inline block, you said correct. So inline, the block and inline is similar to what we looked at here, right? So this red are inline blocks, and this blue are blocks, right? But if I simply change this from inline block to inline, then I cannot give a width to my elements or height to my elements. So that's a bit, so all the textual stuff, they are considered as inline because you don't want any width, right, or height. You want to, if you want to change the height, you should do like using font size or something, but otherwise it should not have any height or width. It won't take any height or width. That's the main difference between inline block. Block is like a block, right? Inline block means it has a piece of, it's a square or rectangular, which could be bigger than your content, right? But inline, which means it should be only the size of the content. Got it? So here inside the, let's say, where's the B, right? B is the inline. So if I've given it 100 width, but as you can see, it's not taking it. I can even give height as 100 pixel, but it's not taking it. It's not gonna take it, as you can see. But as soon as I change it to inline block, it behaves like a piece of block, right?
And what about margin and padding in this case?
Yeah, you can apply margin and padding. That's fine. I'm just talking about the height and width. So I can say, let's say margin, let's say 10 pixel, and it would take it. Okay, that's fine. But if I even change it to inline, right? It won't give you, okay, so it won't give you margin on top because the height, it only want to control of the content, right? But it provides the margin on the left and right. Okay, but as you can see on the top, it doesn't provide. Now, if I want a top margin, then I have to take the parent and provide padding inside. So I can take the class Q, okay, Q, and then what I'll do here is I will just say padding of, let's say, 10 pixel, right? Then I can get that. So I can control it using the padding from outside. So inline is a unique, you only want to use it for mostly for textual things, which doesn't have any other content. That's why you don't want it, the width to be different than the original content, right? It's like, let's say if you have a paragraph and one of the line you want to make it bold, right? So what you do, you can make it a span inside and then make it a bold. And even if somebody provides a height to it, it will not take it. Width to it doesn't, because it's a part of the text, right? So yeah. Any questions? Somebody's calling the. Is that Hamad? Is that your kids?
No, they are. I'm staying with family, so it's their kids.
Oh, okay.
So they're calling me.
Okay.
They're calling me. Come inside. Yes. So yeah, we can look into that one.
Okay. Okay. So the next one is this, right? Did anybody get this one?
Yeah, I have got that one. Yeah, it's just like simple using, there are two ways to do it, like using this. Last time you told like the spread operator, so
yeah,
using that one.
Yeah.
That I did, and I have used also object that assign. I passed a null object first parameter source, and the target is 3 object sequentially, like
ABC,
A, B,
yeah.
C. Then also it's giving me the same result.
Right. Yeah. Did you get it, Sahil? Did you drop off, Sahil? Maybe he's on silent or something. Okay. All right. So yeah, this was simple, but I just wanted to get it. Okay. Let's move to this example where the first one, where I can make this into more reasonably dynamic, right? Because this is, if I want to have some operator, so what I want to do is using callback function. So I want you to understand how callback function can help you to solve this problem. Do you guys know what a callback function is?
I think we can discuss with the callback function maybe.
Okay. Do you know what the callback function is?
yeah, I have an idea,
Okay.
but not like that.
Okay.
That detail.
So
But yeah,
okay.
callback functions. Yeah.
Okay. So the callback function is any function which you can pass into another function body. Okay. So let's say, let me just comment this thing out. And what I'll do here is let's say I have a function called calc, right? The same function. And here what I'll do is, let me remove this. It's only, I'm just gonna call CB, means callback, right? And all I have to do is, so this is actually, so you can pass functions into a function, right, in JavaScript. And what happens when you pass function expressions, you can just simply call it, right? So this is called callback function. So let's say if I create another function called say hi or something, okay? So const say hi equal to function. And all it does is basically saying console log hi, right? Now what I'm gonna do is this callback, this calc function, it basically takes an argument as a callback function, right? And it executes this function inside. So what I'll need to do is I would need to pass this inside. So if I do calc, and if I just say hi, right? Then it should basically, this is nothing but say hi function, this callback. And inside, when I execute this calc function, it executes inside. So it will say, say hi. Okay, so it says hi. It's a simple, whenever you call it, it executes it. That's it. Okay. If I say something here, say console log say something, right? Then it would first say something, and then it would say hi. Right? So it says say something and hi. That's all it is. Callback functions are actually very simple. A lot of people are afraid of it. They don't know how it works, but it's very simple. You have some function that you pass as an argument into another function and execute inside. That's all it is, right? Any question on this? Sahil, Hemant?
I'm good.
Okay. I can also do one thing. I can say, instead of, let's say if I'm only passing it one time, right? Then I don't have to really do this. I can simply pass the whole function inside. Sorry, not here. Here. Right? And it should do the same thing. So here, CB is nothing but the anonymous function. Now I'm not even giving it a name. So I'm passing an anonymous function, and it gets executed. So a lot of time you would see this, that you would have some function and there's another function being passed like this directly, which is not defined anywhere because it's an anonymous function, right? So if I run this, it does the same thing. Okay. Now, how can I solve this problem with this callback function? It's actually very simple. the functionality we had of plus, minus, and all that stuff. Let's see how we can do that. So instead of passing just a sign here, what if I have a function? So let's say I have a function const add equal to, and what it does, it takes two arguments, a and b, and all it does is returns a plus b. Okay, it's pretty simple. Now so here as a O, I don't have to, it's not an operator anymore, it's a function, right? So instead of operator, I'm going to call it f, which means a function. Okay, and I don't have to say plus or minus or anything. Let's just remove the requirement for null for right now. Okay, and so here what I have to do is instead of doing a plus c, I can simply, whatever the function I will be passing, I can do a, pass two arguments, a and c. So this function, which is nothing but this function, I would pass inside, and here I would pass two arguments, a and c, which is nothing but a and b here, and it would return, right? So here I just have to say add, right? It's quite complex, but when you look at it, but if you understand it, it's pretty simple. So if I run it, I get 6, right? Now, if I want to minus subtract, then I can create another function called subtract. Right, which does nothing but minus. And here I don't have to change anything inside, right? So this function stays as it is. And all I have to do is subtract here, right? And when I run this, I'll get minus 6. So it's really simple. So as I said, my function should not be changing much. It's the what I'm passing. This think of this instead of the operator, it's just I'm passing a functionality itself. So this guy is simply doing, you know, abstract calculation. It's just executing this function f, which is nothing but I'm passing this add or subtract, whichever it is, and it's taking two values, which is my accumulator and the last value, and it's just returning it. So this almost becomes like a add, right? Which is like this. Any question on this? This is very important to learn because the whole JavaScript functional programming is based on a callback function. You will see callback functions everywhere. Yeah, Bhuvaneshwari, any questions? Are you getting it or any doubts? This is pretty important because if you're not getting it, then ultimately it will be confusing, right? So I want you to understand this concept very well. Okay. All right. So yeah, so this is pretty simple. Now let's look at something else. Have we looked at the arrow functions yet? I think we haven't, right?
I think we have
Okay.
covered, I guess. We have covered arrow functions. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Sahil, is he there? I think he's looks like offline or something. Maybe. Okay. Anyway, I'm recording this session, so you can look at it later. But do you know, Hamid, much about the arrow function, or are you comfortable with it?
Yeah, I'm okay. I don't have any problem.
Okay. So let me just give you a simple scenario on this. The arrow function is nothing but if I remove the function here, and then just add an arrow in here, and that becomes an arrow function.
I think we do not need the return statement as well, right?
Yeah, you don't even need the return, so I'm gonna change that as well. So when you have an arrow function, it automatically returns. So all you have to do is a plus b. So all I can do is simply this a plus b. Okay, so this is my arrow function, and this becomes a minus b. Okay, here also the same thing. I can simply return this, right? So I don't have to do this. Okay, and if I convert this into an arrow function, then I don't even have to return this, right? Okay, you cannot read this, but this is how it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's run this. This is not.
Looks so crisp, good. Yeah. So shorter and so good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you get that.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. And in this case, it makes sense. I mean, if I would suggest that if it becomes more than the reason it looks nice because now you have abstracted out the functionality of what the operator is, right? I can even have an operator called I don't know what to do with this. I don't know this. Here are your numbers. Now, I would provide two numbers, but as instead of giving subtraction, or I would just simply say I would return like A and B. Okay, something like this. Okay. Now if I pass this here, then it will give me the numbers back because it doesn't know what to do with it. So you can make it, it will bring me the numbers back because it doesn't know what to do with it, right? So this is really important, right? That you can divide your code into some meaningful. So for example, let's say if this is your like a jQuery library or something, right? It doesn't expect you to implement all the features like plus, minus. You could have your own functionality, right? So it just implements some abstract function like this, calculator, and then you provide how you want this to be calculated. So that's the beauty of this callback function is. Okay. Do you know the difference between the regular function and an arrow function in terms of like all the differences, Hamid?
No, I don't have idea. I have never thought about that. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a very common interview question, right? Yeah, because besides the nice syntax here, what are the other uses of an arrow function? Yes, you can use an arrow function pretty much everywhere, but there is a problem. I wouldn't say there is a problem with it, but there is a one thing that is a little different in arrow function that regular function has. Okay, so let's look at that example. So for example, if I have, let's say an object, okay? And it has some value, let's say I equal to 0, right? And it can have like a get I, which is a function, right? That just returns I. Okay. Now, if I do, but here I don't have to say I would say this dot I, right? Because this is an object. So if I do object dot get I would get what? The number I equal to 0 here, right? Okay. So let's look at it. So when I run it, I get 0, right? Now let's convert this get I into an arrow function. Okay. So the way I would have to do it is now get I is a colon and then this, right? Okay. So now if I do this, it says undefined. That is because arrow function does not have this. So what it does, it says, oh, I don't have a this. So it doesn't bind to anything. So it will basically look at upper scope, which is a window scope in this case, right? If I simply do this, let's say return this, and if I run this, I would get a window scope actually, right? Which is outer scope. But if it was like a regular function, so this would be, let's say, in this case, an object, you can write it both ways. You can write it like this, which is a valid syntax, and I get the whole object back, right? Or you can simply do this. This is more like a method. This is also valid syntax, and you get the same thing. Okay. But when you use an arrow function, it doesn't know what this really means. So it's not bound to this object. So when you call it this, it would look at the outside scope. Now there is a one way to deal with it. So
yeah, how to deal with that way? Like what is the alternative?
Yeah, so if you have something like this, let's say if you use arrow function like this, right? Then I can simply say object dot. So you can say object dot I, right? Dot call. Okay. object. So it's basically saying that, did we look at call, apply, and bind yet?
But it is a fundamental kind of things.
Okay.
Call and apply, like how to call those things.
Yeah. So call.
But this is a good example.
Yeah.
Wherever the this is not resolved,
Yeah.
you can use the call and explicitly pass that one. Yeah.
So we are passing explicitly, say, okay, call on this object. Okay. You can also use bind and well, let me this get I call call object this dot I. You know what? I think I have to use bind, and so the syntax for bind is basically script. Well, let's just look at for call first. So call, if I have this function and I want to call in some other method, then I would just simply say, if I'm calling from inside, then I would just say call this, right? But this is basically nothing but that, so I think it should work. That is strange that it's not working. Get I bind, and bind is okay. Let's look at the bind. I think it should work also. Yeah, the bind basically gives you back an object and then you have to execute it. That's the only different. But somehow here, let me see, something is wrong here. Let's start I. That is strange. Why is it not working? This should work because I'm binding with the object. Okay. That is strange. It's really strange. Do you see any problem? I don't see any problem. This dot I.
Bind is like obj get call.
Call executes right away.
Obj.
Call
is working fine.
No, call means execute right away. Okay.
Execute right away. Yeah.
So if I just say, instead of calling get I would say call with this object, right? Which means bind this. Yeah. That's how it is. So it knows this I is basically nothing but this I. Bind is basically nothing but when I do bind.
Just bind and then after call again.
I have to execute the function again. I don't have to call, but I would just have to execute this. So if I do bind, let's look at what it returns first. So if I do dir, so it gives you a bind function, and it has a get. You can see, as you can see, right? It has the I bounded inside, right? Which is
it should return directly the get I rather than it should return all the things.
no. I'm returning the. See, when you do bind, it returns a whole object. So what it does, it takes the get I, and it binds the entire object with it. So now it has a closure. Okay, not a closure. Sorry, it has a bound this object. So as you can see, it's almost like a closure, right? I equal to 0 here, right? Let me do this way instead. Let const bound function equal to this, and bound function execute.
Now it should work. Yes, yeah. Defined, okay, right.
It is somehow very strange. Okay, something is wrong. Yeah. Okay. Still not bound somehow. Okay. Okay, let me look at it. Maybe there's something wrong here. But I'll show you in a different way. But yeah, something is wrong. But as you can see that if you have something is wrong. It should be bound, but you know, okay, something is wrong here. I think maybe it's I'm trying to bind the same thing with itself. That may be the issue. Maybe okay. You know what? Let me do another thing. If I do, let's say, get I bound or something. And then here what I'll do is call get I. Oh, so I have to say this dot get I dot call this. I think you probably you cannot call it directly from itself. I'm assuming that. Okay, I'm not sure. So now if I do, let's say object dot get I, let's say this function, get out bound, and then execute it. Okay, so what happens here is I created another function that actually takes this get I function and it calls this function. Well, this has actually this dot I, right? It's called this function, but instead if calling using this itself, right? Because this is a regular function call. Let's see if it works. This also doesn't work. This dot get I, call this. Hmm. Is it returning? Huh, something is strange. Hmm. Okay, I have to look. I have to look through this.
So
Okay.
we have to, It's
Okay.
JavaScript is always, weird.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes,
I have to look through this. I'll give you a solution next time. I have to do some research.
Yeah,
Why
sure.
is it not working?
You
Okay.
can do some CSS stuff here.
Yeah. Okay. I'll get back to you on this one. Okay. So yeah, look at here. Okay. Here's a demo. So you have a module, and you have a getX, which is a function, and this guy, what is it doing is unbound function is module.getX. So it gives you this function, and then it basically binds back with the module. That's what we did, right? And then it calls it.
The module is basically binding that variable.
Yeah.
Which is holding the.
Yeah. Let's try this. Let's try this here. Okay, so I get 42 here somehow. Okay, why was it the other one was not working? Okay.
Because they're using something arrow functions.
No.
The arrow functions is not that. It's a normal function. Convert that to arrow function. That's just it, I guess.
Yeah, but
Let's try it. Yeah, let's try that one.
it doesn't work here.
Yeah. See? Yeah.
Okay.
Because we were trying that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually, you should not use arrow function in an object like this anyway. Think of arrow functions are like regular functions, right? That should not. If you have something like this inside, then you're not using arrow function for the right location. Okay, so that's the. But yeah, usually if it's a regular object, you always use the function like this. Okay, but if it's like inside your another function, then arrow function is very ideal. So the problem with the arrow function, a regular function here. So I'll show you another example. So let's say if I have a function called a, right? And let's say inside I have another function, constant, but this is, let's say, an arrow function. Okay, and it would say console log this dot a or something like this, right? And here I would say, let's say this dot, well, sorry, not this dot a. Let's say if I have create a variable, a property here called x, right? Equal to, let's say, 1. And I should just say prop equal to 1. And I can say prop here, right? So if I execute this b function, it should just simply return this prop, right? In a way. So let's say if I do, well, let's say this is actually dot b, actually, like something like this. Okay, so now if I say let const new a equal to new a. I think we haven't learned this, but this is basically a constructor, right? Just like a class. So it basically says prop equal to 1 and b equal to this. So this a, if I just console log it, sorry, new a, it should have prop and a b, right? So if I look at this, and it has two things. It has a prop 1 and it has a function b, right? So now if I use, let's say b here, execute this, it should return me 1, right? So if I run this, it returns me 1, right? Well, this should not be console log because it's console logging inside, so it returns me 1, right? But if I change this to a regular function here, then it's a problem, because this, for a regular function, it's its own this of this function. So it's not gonna give me a this dot prop here. So now if I run this, well, hold on, this dot be equal to function. This dot be equal to function. So here, this works fine. And also regular function. Oh, you know what? Let's do this way. So this is fine, but all right. Let's do this. Yeah, maybe it's the wrong example, because this here would work because this is inside the. I'm doing. Why is it working? Yeah, I have a feeling that something has changed in the browser or something. I don't know. This is not supposed to work because it's a regular function, but if I try to do this inside, it should not work. Somehow it's giving me 1, which is really strange. Okay, let me look through it. I think in both of the cases not working somehow. They both behave the same way, except yeah. Okay, yeah, there's something really strange about it. All right, let me get back to you on this one, because yeah, this is like a question I ask in an interview and always. You know what?
Yeah.
You know what? Okay. Let me do this way. Okay, so in this example, we will do something a little different. So here, instead of returning this.x, I can simply do, let's say, have another function called inner function. Okay, and let's say this is a regular function. And if I say return this dot x, and if I do console log module dot get x, right? And all it's doing is basically executing the inner function. Okay. This should give me undefined. Okay, as you can see. But if I change this to an arrow function, this dot x. is it still giving me an error? Yeah, this should definitely work. Ah, I was not returning. That's why. My bad. Okay. Okay, something is wrong here. But if I convert into function, okay, all right. You see, when it's a function, and then this dot x doesn't work. But if I change this to an arrow function, then it works. So I forgot to return here because what happens? This function returns 42, right? So then this getX has to return that.
Why will return again? We don't need return, right? GetX, then return whenever we create object and say getX. GetX is returning this dot x. We don't need to return twice, right?
No. So think of this way, and that was an issue. So let's say you have an inner function, right? This, when I execute this function, right? This one return 42, right? If I console log directly here, and it's fine, it returns 42, right? But this getX function, it doesn't return anything, right? So I have to return, because if I, for any function, if it's not return, and if it doesn't return anything, then it returns undefined, right? So I have to, what I have to do is return the result of this inner function. Then it would, okay. So that was a case. I was like, something is wrong here. Okay. But if I change this to a regular function, okay, then it gives me undefined because it doesn't know what this is, right? So, and if I simply do this instead of this, it will give me windows, right? Right. And if I just do arrow function, and look at it, it gives me the entire object. So that's the difference. You see, this here means my object here, and if I just do regular function, that means it's a Windows function because it's looking it out. Okay, so that's a main difference. Okay, so this is the right example, but I was not returning this. Otherwise, then it would, every time it was giving me undefined, right? Because every function need to return something. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So that's, yeah. JavaScript can get so complicated. Okay. All right. So now let's look at some CSS work. Okay. So last, any question? Is Sahil there, or Sahil, are you here?
Yes, my connection was lost on there.
Oh, okay. Okay. Good.
Last time you speak about something inline content weights and height. I was not able to quite get that. So if you could little
Sure.
discuss about that.
Sure. So let's look at it, right? So let me look at, okay, let's see. I'm going to, well, I'll just take one of these example, and I'm just going to call this parent. Okay. happening here? Let's see. You have 3 divs. Why copying this one doesn't work? All right, let's just write it manually somehow. Okay, so let's say if I have a parent class, right? Why does it not work for me? Code pen. Okay, so let's say if I have a parent, I'm going to call it P, and it has class A, right? B, which is B, and let's just keep it A and B, right? And for parent, I'm not going to do anything, but let's say for A and B, if I want to apply to both A and B, I would use it something like this. Okay, this is called selector basically. And what I'll do is, so the block you guys understood, right? So if it's a block, by default it's a block, right? So if I have a border, which is, let's say 1 pixel solid red, then it takes 100%, right? So there is no doubt here, right? Okay. So it's 100%. And the height is the font size, which is A, and it actually adds some like few pixels padding here, but that's fine. If I want to change the width, I would simply change the font size to, let's say, 20 pixels. And it would work, right? Let's just make it like a 40 so it's visible. Okay. So the height is controlled by font. If I don't provide any width or height by default, the height is controlled by the font and width is controlled by the window size, right? Or parents in this case, which is P. Okay. So A and B has a common parent, which is P. All right. And I can control P. So if I say width now is, let's say, 200 pixel, then they both are now shrinking, right? Okay, you can see the green border around the whole thing, which means the parent is the green. Okay, so this is a display block, which is default for divs. Okay, now for both of these elements, I'm just going to say display as inline block. And the word inline itself means put them side by side, right? And now, because I haven't given any size yet, because A and B haven't given any size yet, yeah? So I haven't given it a width. So parents' width doesn't matter because now it's inline, because it's gonna side by side. So it takes a contents width, which is width of A and B, right? Now, I can control the height and width here also. So you can say, let's say width is, let's say, 100 pixels, right? Even though the parent is 200 pixels, I can control the width because it, and you can see now it becomes stacks. You know why? Because it wraps. So if the parent is smaller than the both elements, it would wrap. Okay, so if I make it 100, what happens? It wraps because it has to fit in the parent. It cannot become bigger than parent, right? So if I limit the parent size to 100, let's say if I make it 50, right? Now it's kind of fits, but you cannot fit both of them, right? Um, so this is it wraps basically. Um, for example, if I have more than A, B, C, D, let's say C and D, right? And if I don't provide any width, and let's say make this 100, 500, it's like this, right? Now I'm gonna make it 400, it's still fine. 300, it's still fine. 200, still fine. 100, still fine. Because if you add A, B, C, D, it's still 100 is still greater than all the width of altogether, right? But as soon as it becomes 90, let's say 90, then it starts wrapping because it cannot fit. If I make 80, still fine. Okay. All right. So it starts to wrap. So this is inline block. Okay. Any question in this one?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. How about Sahil?
Yes, fine.
Okay. Good. Good. Okay. So now let's look at the inline itself. So I'm going to make it inline now. Okay. There is no change right now because I haven't even given any width and size. But the thing is, even if I give width now, let's say 100 pixels, it would ignore. Okay, so height and width doesn't impact the inline element at all. As soon as I change this to inline block, as you can see, it has changed now. Right? Now it's wrapping because the parent size is a little bit smaller, so I'm gonna make it bigger and it fits, right? So inline block, think of blocks are the blocks pieces, right? But inline as a simple text, it should not be exceeding its width and height more than those letters, right? So it ignores the width and height completely. Okay. So yeah, so this is basically, you got it, Hammond?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would suggest trying out. This is one of the most, as you can see, like most of the web pages, you need situation like this where things are wrapping and you need a control. So you need to understand the default behavior. Okay. Uh, so don't apply height and width everywhere. Just understand your content. Let the default height and width control your thing, right? So a lot of people say, oh, when it's responsive, which means I need to change the size, right? So let me show you what that really means. So for example, let's say I have this situation here, right, where I have A, B, C, D, and it's automatically kind of responsive, right? Sorry. Um, when I let's say make this a block, right? Now this is 100%, right? So now, and let me make the width of it, let's say 200 or something. Okay, so now I have these 4 blocks. So it's automatically kind of responsive, right? So now parent size is because it's a block and it's 100% width, it's changing with my web page, right? As soon as I hit this D, let's see what happens. It goes down. As soon as I hit the C, it goes down. So in a way, it is responsive, right? Now it becomes completely, right? Because my outer element is dynamic, inner becomes dynamic as well, as you can see. Okay. So whenever you're making a responsive design, you need to think it this way. Okay, if it's something natural, then you wanna let it be natural in this way. Okay, we'll look at the responsive overall once we learn all the other techniques, but this is an important one. Okay, so um, what about the other possibility of display property? So there are lots of other display properties. You can look at what others are. So here the display is inline block, but if I cancel it, these are all the contents, flex root. So if you once we learn the flex box, we'll learn all of that. Initial is basically whatever the default is provided, you make it. So you basically say, you just give me the initial value, whatever that was before. Inherit means make the parents, whatever parents. So if I say inherit, which means it makes the parents. So here in this case, if I make parent an inline block, so right now so let's say inherit. That's how I say it. Okay. And now, okay, and so if I make parent, let's say display inline or something. So now the parent became inline, the children became inline, right? Because I'm saying inherit. If the parent became, let's say, block, children became block, right? Well, there's a width, that's why you don't see it, but as soon as I say block, it becomes block. If I say inline block, BLOCK, then it becomes an inline block, right? So inherit does that. You can also do, there's a table, okay? You know what none is? None means hide it. If I want to hide something, I would say display none. It's hidden now. Okay. So, yeah. So, well, I just did it in the console. Let's say if I do none, means hides it, right? It basically as if it doesn't even exist. Okay. What else? Uh, that's about it. I mean, there are other ones, but we'll look at later because they are related to a particular framework. Like you can do flex, um, which means flex box, and you have to apply the the flex. But once we learn all the other stuff, we'll go to flex.
What what's this flex basically?
So flex is actually nice. So have you used the bootstrap before?
Yeah, we use little bit, but I won't. I mean, it's just easy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Bootstrap, like everything has been done. You just apply the CSS, but we never control the layout is designed by someone.
Okay.
So just apply a little
So
CSS.
so flex is very important thing to learn nowadays because whatever the functionality of bootstrap was there, it's now inside a flex frame, which is natively available now in CSS. So for example, if you want to know more about it, um, there are lots of. It's called Flexbox basically. Okay.
So every browser by default support, or we have to do something to.
So all the newer browser supports. Okay. So because remember the natural flow of things, you can actually control much with the Flex. So for example, the container. So this is your container, right? And inside you have items. So remember I had a parent and then children, right? So you can control their behavior. So let's say the children, even though I've defined A, B, C, D, what if I want to change the order? I can actually change that. I can give each item different order by saying something like order 1, order 2. So it actually, they also go in a different order, right? I can say grow means it takes the, the size of the container. I can also do like a row and column. So row means they are arranged like this. I can change the direction. So my ABCD would be, you see how useful this is, right? You can control how your elements are displayed much easier compared to the regular display property with the flex box. Okay, I can say wrap it, which means it will wrap it this way, shrink it. So we'll look at that. There's a flex content justified. You can do this way, so it starts from left to right, right to left, space between, so there are lots of other things. It's actually a subject in itself. Okay, so that's why I want you to teach it in the end, so that all of these basic stuff are covered before I start the Flexbox. But pretty much if you understand Flexbox, you can actually control quite a bit of. So you can design your layout website the way you like it. Really, you can control it much nicely. Okay. Yeah. So we will look at it somewhere in the middle once we finish all the other stuff, right? Because it requires some other stuff, knowledge of other stuff. So I don't want to start right now without taking you to other concepts. Okay. All right. Do you guys know about the position property?
No.
Okay. So
Yeah, I mean for the position, I usually get confused with absolute and relative.
yeah. So absolute, relative, and so there are three. So see how display allows you to arrange things in a stack or in a row, right? Pretty much think of that way, right? So you have a bunch of element A, B, C, D. So I have this A, B, C, D here, and I can control it. Is it going to be on top of each other, or is it going to be side by side, right? With the display property. Now, with the position property, I can go one step further. where I can actually take these elements and actually do it in a different order. Okay, so a good example would be, let me do A B C D. Let me ABC here, not D. So by default, the position is called static. By default, every element has a position static. Okay, so if I can look at it, and if I look at the computed, and if I do position, it's static. Okay, so by default it's static. Static means don't do anything, don't interfere. Let the display property control how your things are going to be arranged. Is it going to be on the top of each other, or is it going to be side by side? Okay, but you can actually control this. So let me do B, which is the class B here, and I can say B, and I can change its position to relative. Okay, and by default I'm just going to do A, B, and C, where I can apply some common style. So let's say border is 1 pixel solid red. Okay, so by default it's a stack because it's a display block, and I have everything else is static position, but I'm only changing B, which is the middle, to relative, which doesn't do anything right now. But relative means I need an ability to move this B around its original position. So let's say if I want to move just a little bit on the right side. So if I want to move it right side, I would say give on the left side some 10 pixel, right? So basically have a 10 pixel on the left side, which means I'm moving it right side. Okay, so B actually moved just like this. Now if I want to move it right side, I mean want to move left side, then I would put 10 pixel on a right side, so it moves. So on here it added that 10 pixel, so it moved this side. Okay, what about top? If I want to top, I would say put 10 pixel at the bottom. Okay, now what happened? It actually did not affect A and C at all. It just B is almost like on the top of C, right? So you can move around B without interfering with anything else, and this is called position relative. Okay, so the application of this position relative is you can move one element without disturbing everything else. Any question?
So then if you wouldn't use a relative, then what would happen if you stop that?
It doesn't even apply. So let's say if I don't use this, it doesn't even apply. I can say top 100 only applies when you have a position relative or even absolute. Okay, so position static means it's static. Even if I move top, left, right, it doesn't apply. It only applies when I say position relative, then it starts moving around.
So by default, static.
By default, it's always static. Yes. So remember, we looked at the how to arrange items first in with using position display property, right? But now with the position, we are able to move individual elements. Okay. So this is very useful. What if I want to just don't care about this? Is still B still holds this original position, right? Even if I do relative. It still holds this original position. It just moves around on a different, on almost like a different plane. So if I do 100, so A was there before, where it was before. C is still there where it was before. It just B is moving around. So this is an ideal case where it doesn't disturb your environment, right? Now let's look at position relative. Position absolute. Okay. Let's see what happened. When I look at position absolute, first of all, it's no longer a block, as you can see. It actually kind of takes it out of the picture, this whole thing. And it becomes, it's like almost like, okay, I'm gonna take it out of this. Imagine if you're standing in a line, so A is before you, C is after you, right? When I say position absolute, which means just take him the whole thing, be outside of the line, and he's on in a balcony or somewhere, right, on a different plane. And now I can actually move this guy, you know, left, right, but this is now relative to the parent, not its original position, right? So this is a little different than position relative. Now it's reference to this, its parent, which is the left corner. So when I say 100 pixel top, which means there is a difference, it's from the original top. If I say top 0, for example, which means it's going to be at the corner where the parent lies, right? If I say left 0, then it's going to be in the right corner. If I say, so if I want to put the left and a right top, then it goes on the top of that corner. If I want to make it at a right corner, then I would say here. Then it goes in a right corner. Okay. If I wanted a bottom here, this corner, then I would simply say bottom. Then it's here, right? And if I want this corner, then I would say left bottom, right? So it's almost like it's a completely different plane, as if it doesn't like exist for A and C. So it's almost like it took off on its own, right?
So, which is the parent for this? This class P is the parent
P,
for?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And another rule is also parent has to be relative. So if I do P and let's say width is 200 pixels, and height, which is also, let's say, 200 pixels, right? Okay, I have to make this parent position relative for it to actually to take position. Okay, see now it when I say let's say right here, okay, it's within its parent. So if you want to move some, like if you have a let's say some container where there's a button, right, and you want to move it without this order things, you can freely move it, and that's where you want to use absolute, but it always lives within the parent's boundary, as you can see, right? Okay, but if I take the parent's relativeness, then it becomes the all the way the top parent, right, which is a body. As soon as I said parent is no longer relative, then it became relative to the root, right? So I have to have a this way for it to actually work for the parent, yeah. Okay, so this is where you can actually move stuff around non-linearly. Another cool one is actually I don't know why is it not copying somehow. Oh, okay, so I want to show you a different one. Now let's make this be a fixed position. I'm just gonna make it black so we can see it, and I'm just gonna say left, and I'm not gonna say bottom, so it's staying here. I'm gonna put some width here, let's say 20 pixels or something. Okay, so now as you see it's here, right? So fix is basically nothing but, remember when you have some ads on your page where your page moves but this ad just stays as where it is? That's how they're doing it. So you say position fix, and then you can control same like, you know, left right corner, but it doesn't care about the parent anymore. It's now about the fixed position, means it's going to stay relative to the whole page. Okay, any questions? Sahil?
No, I think I'm good, but I think I need to practice this.
Yeah, you need to practice. I'll give you some tests to practice. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you need to try this thing out in order to really see. Okay. But I think these are two main important things. You need to understand position and display property, so you can actually place your element where you really want to place them.
Yeah, actually, I use it whenever like I need Z index, like Z index. Whenever I need Z index, so I use it like relative and absolute.
Yeah, yeah. You have to use the index in order to bring it to front and back. Yeah. If you have multiple of these absolute elements, then you would need the index. Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. So I think let's just stop here. Um, and Bhuvneshwari, any questions, or are you understanding everything? Feel free to. Okay, good. All right. Feel free to let me know.
Emil,
Yeah.
I watched your video on this unit testing Angular.
Okay.
I just have a question like
Sure.
related to it.
Sure. What
So
is it?
suppose there is function created, like there is function in the TS file
Okay.
where we are passing this thing boolean passing like function
Okay.
boolean. And we created the function. So while testing it, can we? So how should we test it? Like in the same function, should we pass true, false? That's how we test it.
Yeah.
Like both conditions we should test. Like if it's true, then this should work. If it's false, then this should work. That's how we test it.
Yeah. You should be able to pass. You should expect. Let's say you have some function, right? And you don't know if it's gonna be if how it's going what's gonna be passed to it. So you can even try string. What if somebody passes string to this, right?
Okay.
Yeah. If you have a default value, then it will take care of if it's a null or undefined, right? So depends. So you need to look at what is a possibility. Like, so if another function is calling this function, then you can predict if there is a control on through that function that it's going to be make sure that it's a boolean. Then you can simply say, okay, you try with a false and true. But if it's more than that, then you have to really you have to try, string, boolean, numbers, and you already know if you pass a number to this, what would happen, right? So then you say, okay, if I
Actually,
pass.
there is a suppose there is a function a,
Mhm.
and in that function a, we are passing boolean. So when it is false, there is some value inside it, like
Okay.
this dot name
Okay.
becomes true. When it is where we are, it's true. Like the boolean is true, then the value inside becomes true. When
Okay.
it is false, the value inside that function becomes false, and I want to test it.
Yeah, so let's say if I have something like this, well, let me just do JS fill.